So while we're waiting for everyone to join, just have it start and record it now. So what we'll do is we're probably going to cut off like the beginning of the portion while everyone's joining, and then kind of edit it out, and then we'll upload that at a later time.
Is this fine? The screen, or do you want me to stop sharing?
No, it looks great.
All right.
Yeah, just leave it up. Are you able to join, Sandy?
Yeah.
Okay, John, what was there?
Recording in progress.
Okay, so our guests are joining in. All right, we'll just give them a couple of more minutes.
I'm fine waiting until like 2:05.
For sure. Sounds good. Oh, great. We got Sayon on, Marco.
Hi, Marco.
Hey there.
Yes. All right, so we can just start in another minute. All right, we're about ready to start.
So whenever you pass it to John, just let me know, give me some warning, and then I can kind of talk with him, and then we can so he doesn't have those.
All right, so I guess we can start, Marco. So yeah, hello everyone that's joining online in person. Thank you so much. So my name is Don Pin. I'm a business navigator with the United Cambodian Community. And today we'll be discussing and learning about five important topics or things that small business owners should know. And then, we'll introduce our guest speaker in a little bit. And but before I start, I just want to read a short disclaimer for our guest today. And basically, I just want to let everyone know that here at the API's UCC, we are a part of a collaboration with the Asian Pacific Islanders Small Business Program. And we provide services on an equal base opportunity. So if anyone needs, whether it's ADA accommodation or interpretation in a different language, we just ask for you to let us know 2 weeks in advance. And we are partly funded by the Small Business Administration. And so with today's workshop, we just want to let everyone know that with the conclusions or recommendations made today is solely based off of the those being said, like it's basically falls on us and not necessarily the Small Business Administration. And so I would just like to pass this on to my program manager, Sayan, for you to introduce yourself, and then we can bring on our special guest speaker.
Thank you, Don, and welcome everyone to our first, well, not first, but one of the many small business topics, 5 areas that you need to know. And we have a guest speaker here from Bet Tzedek Legal Services, Marco Castanos, and he's going to be giving us a great overview. And so hopefully we could hear about his organization, as well as ask good questions and what people can do as a small business or a startup. And I'll pass it over back to Don.
All right, well, thank you, Sayan. And before we do introduce Marco, for those who are joining online, I just want to let you know there is a hand raise button, or whenever you do have a question, you can just type that in the chat. I'm going to provide you with Marco's email address as well, so that way towards the end, or when you need to get in contact with him with his services, you can actually do so. And also, if you do have any questions while he's discussing on certain important topics that you might want to answer, just raise your hand, so that way it makes us aware, and we can probably have you answer your questions right there and then. Okay. Thank you, Marco. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Sayan. Thank you so much for having me. And hello to everyone who's joining us. My name is Marco Castanos. I'm a staff attorney at Bet Tzedek Legal Services in the Small Business Development Program. I want to thank the United Cambodian community in Long Beach for hosting us and for giving us the opportunity to present on this topic, as well as the numerous co-sponsors. We are also a program that's facilitated by different organizations, and the city and the county of Los Angeles being among them. So it's our job to put this information out there. I'm looking forward to talking about what the Small Business Development Program does, and how we make ourselves available to the small business community to meet some of their legal needs. And then I'm happy to jump into some of what we consider to be top tips as it relates to getting started. So Bet Tzedek is a nonprofit legal services agency. We've been in LA, in the city of LA, for almost 50 years. We're actually going to turn 50 next year, and we provide free legal services over a wide array of areas. So I'm here to talk about small businesses today, but we also do work as it relates to tenants, workers, elders, Holocaust survivors. So there's a lot that we do. And the services that we provide are provided regardless of an individual's race, religion, ethnicity, or immigration status. Those aren't a part of our intake process or a reason to prevent somebody from being able to access our legal services. And like I said, the topic of today's conversation are the small business top tips. So more background on the program. We're called SBD, Small Business Development, and our job is to help small businesses and low to moderate income entrepreneurs. We do that by providing free services on a wide array of transactional matters. What are transactional matters? So like negotiating an agreement, drafting a contract, creating a business entity, protecting intellectual property, sometimes tax advice, sometimes bankruptcy advice. Those are conversations that we can have. What we don't do are like lawsuits. We don't defend lawsuits. That's called litigation, and that's beyond the scope of our practice. So the way that we reach small businesses and connect our services to small businesses are through things like this today, right? Community presentations, workshops. We also have very similar small business legal academies where that's an opportunity for you to hear about a specific topic of law from myself or somebody else on the team or another attorney, and then have the opportunity to actually have one-on-one FaceTime with an attorney, whether it be in person or we also do these through Zoom as well. And the small business legal academies are really neat as far as, you know, learning about a topic, but then also being able to talk to a lawyer about what's going on and having them be your lawyer for the day and give you real legal advice around what's going on. So I encourage you to get connected to us, get on our listserv so that you know about upcoming small business legal academies as well as other presentations that we have coming up. The third strategy that we use are through our guides and written materials, as well as, you know, YouTube recordings of trainings such as this one and others that we've done in the past. We speak frequently on topics such as intellectual property protection, commercial tenancies, contracts, employment law, tax. So those are all stored online. We have written materials that cover those topics, as well as recordings of other presentations that we've done in the past on those topics. And then finally, I'm a lawyer. I work with a team of lawyers, and we also have wide access to a real strong group of private attorneys who want to do work for free for us through pro bono work, people who like getting pro bono cases from our organization. And that allows us to actually get involved with direct representation, which actually means signing a retainer with you as a client, taking you on, walking through the steps, being able to provide counsel and advice, being able to provide a discrete service as far as, you know, generating a contract or walking you through registering your business with the Secretary of State. This chart, I'm going to leave it up for a little bit because it describes, you know, what we've done in the past and what we do. These are topics of law that relate to small businesses. Each one is its own topic, right? But we're able to actually address all of these and provide services and resources and guides related to all of these. So as I mentioned before, although I'm an attorney and I work on a team of attorneys, we also have this really wide net of private pro bono attorneys. I'm talking people who work at really prestigious private law firms across LA, and they really like taking on cases from us, and they really like working with small businesses because these are people who have been, you know, drafting contracts and agreements for really large corporations and banks and businesses across the country and around the world. But then they get to take a step back from that and actually help small businesses and entrepreneurs here in LA County have access to that same level of service. So we're really proud of, you know, cultivating that network, and that's what allows us to ultimately address such matters as business structure, entity formation, contracts, commercial leases, employment law, everything, you know, that in the wake of COVID, what protections are still out there, what resources are still out there, is there any form of relief still available? Also, you know, services or counsel and advice as it relates to intellectual property, trademark protection, copyright protection, patent protection. We also, you know, we're seeing this a lot, you know, internet privacy and ADA compliance with your website. So that comes up all the time, and we take those cases on. So if you're a small business and you operate a website and you're already considering whether, you know, somebody's going to come after you for ADA compliance, or you have a storefront and you've already gotten a demand letter from somebody who's telling you that your business is not ADA compliant, I invite you to reach out to us because those are matters that we're seeing, and we love to be able to provide resources on that to at least either take your case on or point you in the right direction. Insurance, very important topic, especially for a new business. Like, what types of policies do you need to have? Is there someone who's going to be able to walk you through that process? We don't do insurance here, but you know, we can indicate the right direction and point you toward the people and the resources that actually do handle that type of issue, not from the legal side, but like from the actual insurance broker adjuster side. And then finally, same goes for bankruptcy. We don't handle bankruptcy claims in-house, but we can provide counsel and advice on bankruptcy, as well as resources and signposts as far as what other organizations are out there that can help you with your bankruptcy and whether or not it's the right option for you and your business. Now, since we are a nonprofit, and we subsist on funds and grants from different levels of government and other entities, all that money comes with specific requirements, right? So we really need to match the community we're serving with the actual services we're providing. So when you reach out to us for assistance, for legal assistance, if you would like to explore gaining direct representation from us, then we are required to put you through our intake process, where we ask a few eligibility questions. So just know that we'll ask questions about your household income, as well as your business's profits and sales. Now, our services are only are restricted to only for-profit businesses in LA County. That means we do not serve nonprofits or people who are trying to start nonprofits, and we don't serve businesses that are either not headquartered in LA County or are not doing business in LA County. And as I mentioned earlier, we provide transactional, not litigation services. There are certain pre-litigation services that we might be able to provide on a case-by-case basis, but our primary focus is providing transactional services. That's the mission that we're tasked with as an organization. I did want to mention that similar to what Don said at the beginning of the presentation, our services as well are provided without regard to access. That shouldn't be an issue. So if there is a language ability potential barrier that could arise, our services are tapped into and tied into translation phone lines that allow us to provide real-time counsel and advice and conversations with people in a wide array of languages, like so many languages. And we use that frequently to meet our clients' needs. So I'm going to leave this slide up for just a little while, and Don, if you could please help me out with putting these links in the chat. If you would like to access our free resources, I invite you to go to our website, and you navigate it, you get to the small business webpage, and you'll find our resources there. If you have any trouble getting there, then I encourage you to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. There's my email address. And finally, at the bottom is our application for assistance. If you find and realize that you're facing a legal issue and you would like to talk to someone about what's going on, then I strongly encourage you to fill out the application and get in touch with us. It is going to be better for you if you spend some time with the resources first, to kind of make yourself aware of what like a strong legal foundation is, so you understand what's going on. And then at that point, happy to speak with you and really work through a problem and see what if anything we can do. I'm gonna check the chat really quick because I see that there's been a notification there for a little while. Okay, perfect. I haven't missed anything. And I just want to say at this point that if you have questions about our services, or if you have questions about the presentation, definitely going to make time for it at the very end, where you can ask about what we provide, or any specific questions about the topic that we're going to talk about today. Were you going to say something, Don?
No, I was just going to let you know that was us just providing them, our guests, with your information.
Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. I need to read this aloud before we do so. So this is our small business top tips presentation, and this is our disclaimer to get us started. The following information is intended to assist in spotting legal issues relevant to small businesses in the state of California. There are many factors to be considered in determining which actions and decisions would be most appropriate to any specific situation. This presentation only discusses some of the more important factors. It is not intended to substitute for legal advice. You should decide which course of action is best after discussing it thoroughly with an attorney. So that's very important. That lays out kind of the expectations of what this conversation is going to look like. The way I like to summarize it is by letting you all know I am an attorney. I am not your attorney. Anything that I share right now is just legal information, and I'm not providing you with any advice related to your specific situation. If you would like to have a conversation regarding your specific situation, then I invite you to reach out to us. And fill out an intake application so that we can talk about it and really set clear what the relationship will be before we give any legal advice. So I'm going to run through a couple of different things, and I want everybody to know that each of these topics is its own area of law. So there's each topic that each slide that you see is going to have its own set of lawyers that practice there. So this is a very wide scale, very zoomed out look at some of these steps, so that you know what the principles are, so that you know what steps you need to take. But there is a lot of areas between those steps that involve conversations, and very often conversations with lawyers, about which step is right for you and which sort of paperwork is right for you. So I can say something like, you need an operating agreement, but what is going to go into your operating agreement is going to be very specific to who you are and what you do. So although I'm telling you that you should have an operating agreement, you should then talk to an attorney about what should go into your operating agreement, or really take some time to map out what are your priorities as it relates to your business. So the first step for us is always starting your business, right? What does that mean? What does it mean to create a business? Now, like legally, right? If you start selling stuff and ask people to reach out to you because you're either willing to provide a service or you're willing to sell an item, you're doing business, but that's still just you, right? That's you operating as a sole proprietor. And a lot of people stick as sole proprietors, for their whole careers. And they are able to build, really strong businesses, profitable businesses, without ever creating an LLC or without ever creating a corporation. That's called the sole proprietorship. And legally, that means that there is no difference between the business and the person. You might have obtained a DBA. You have a fictitious business statement that that says that such person is operating as such business, but it's never going to be Inc. or it's never going to be LLC. And the reason that that's important is that when you operate as a sole proprietorship, there is no legal difference between you as a person and your business. That means that your personal bank account is also accessible to your business bank account. And if you ever find yourself in the middle of a lawsuit, somebody who sues your business will be able to go after your personal bank account and your personal assets, and your personal property and real property, right? All depending on the circumstances of the lawsuit and what the judgment says and how far it goes and whether you weren't able to settle. There's another realm there, but it's important to know what the benefits of an LLC or stock corporation are. Now, I'm going to talk about the benefits, but you need to know that they are not free, right? Because that's the trade-off. Creating an LLC or a stock corporation require paying the state of California, the Secretary of State's office, to actually register your business. That's $70 for the filing, plus annual or semi-annual updates that you need to send to them called the Statement of Information. It's just $20. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but the real big kicker is the California franchise tax, which for an LLC and for a corporation is a minimum of $800 each year. So what I always tell people is creating an LLC or a corporation might be logical for you if your business is netting you more than $800 a year. Because if you're not actually earning any money, and you still have to pay the $800, then it's really not worth it. Unless, of course, you have a lot of personal assets, you have a lot of personal property or real property that you want to protect. In that case, it might still make sense to create the separate business entity while still having to pay the $800 California franchise tax. So this whole decision depends on your assets, how exposed you might be, how exposed your assets might be. That depends on your industry, that depends on your practices, that depends on other paperwork. It might also be a reputation thing where you're trying to solicit contracts or investors, and they're going to want to expect to deal with an LLC or expect to deal with a corporation and not with a sole proprietor. And also for contracts, because if you enter into a contract as a sole proprietor, then you as an individual are liable for any damages caused, like any damages available under that contract. Whereas on the other hand, if you were to sign a contract just as an LLC or just as a corporation, then your exposure would be limited just to the assets of your LLC or corporation, because you, the individual, never signed the contract, which means your individual your individual bank accounts are not available. With regard to contracts, we'll speak later about the personal guarantee, because that's also really important. I'm sure Sion and Don, working with small businesses, you must hear this all the time. I want to form an S corporation. I'm ready to create an S corporation. And I want to dispel some rumors around an S corporation and let you know that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and it is more than just forming an S corporation. So an S corporation is an IRS tax designation. It is something that the federal government considers your business, okay? The S corporation only comes into play when it comes time for filing taxes. Now, an LLC or a stock corporation can be registered as an S corp. So you do not need to create a corporation in California in order to register as an S corp. You can be an LLC registered as an S corp. S corp status is available to both types of entities. The real benefit of an S corp is you don't suffer from double taxation because you pay yourself a salary as an employee of your business. So this designation really only makes sense if you're earning enough money to pay yourself a reasonable salary, because otherwise the numbers just aren't going to add up, and you might actually trigger in further investigation by the IRS as far as like, why is this entity actually enjoying this tax designation if they're really not turning a profit at all? Or why is this person paying themselves either so little or so much for their industry, for their position? Next, maintaining your LLC or maintaining your corporation, because it's very important. It's not as easy as just forming it. You need to maintain it over time in order to really prove to the state of California or a court of law that it is real. The way that you do that is, by preparing an annual statement that it shows internally that like things are happening or things didn't happen. Just type that up, put that away in your records, and you're good to go. Same goes for if you're an LLC, an operating agreement. It's just a document with your signature that says, I, such person, formed this business on such date. I intend for it to be run in this way. These are the people that are allowed to go to the bank on my behalf. Here's how decisions are made. If you have more than one owner, it says, here are the owners. Here's how their assets and how their shares are divided. The same goes for a corporation. Those are called bylaws. So an LLC has an operating agreement, a corporation has bylaws. And in these, you also name and identify authorized officers, who are people who are allowed to make decisions on behalf of your business. People who are allowed to open up a bank account, who are allowed to access your bank account, things like that. So you want to have that in writing at the very beginning, because that's going to show and prove that your LLC or your corporation are real, which are ultimately going to benefit you down the line as far as protecting your assets, creating more legitimacy around your business, having it seem like a more serious operating entity. And finally, it's also important to capitalize your separate entity, because what we're doing here is we're creating a separate life form, right? The LLC is separate from you, and you have the opportunity to create a bank account using that LLC's tax ID number, which is the topic of a different conversation. But once you get that tax ID number, it's important for you to create a business bank account and actually capitalize it. Show that you are moving money from either your funds or other funds that you've raised, and you are formally moving them into the business and conveying them to the business. You do that through a spreadsheet that you keep as part of your records that says, on X date, I conveyed $5,000 to the business, as the business is now cash assets, right? You keep a running list of that to show that you are not commingling funds, that you are keeping things separate, and when you are conveying money to the business or taking a distribution, that it is very clear in the records, so that you're not exposing yourself and your personal assets to liability, and vice versa. That was a lot of information. Like I said, this is all under the realm of corporations as a legal topic, so it's very dense. There's a lot here, but these are things that I want you to have in mind. Is creating an LLC right for you? It's not right for everyone at every time. If you are going to create an LLC, what are the steps you need to take to showing that it's serious? Maintain the right paperwork and capitalize it. Make sure that it actually has money. Now, when you're creating your business, you have to be willing to explore what's required of you in your industry, as far as what in your industry and in your location, as far as what you intend to do. So one of the first steps is to get the, like I said, this is the tax ID number for your LLC or corporation. It's the federal EIN number. It's free, super accessible on the IRS website. You go to irs.gov. It's on the landing page. It says apply for an EIN. Like I said, you just input the information and you get it back right away. And that's the number that you then use to engage in commerce, whether that means opening a bank account or anything else that might require. Maybe you're applying for a grant or a grant or a loan, and that requires the tax ID number. So that's your federal EIN. It's called the employer identification number. It does not mean that you have employees, even if you are, sole proprietorship, self-employed, only person operating at your business. You still want to have even if you're like a self-employed LLC, just single member without employees, it is important to obtain your EIN so that you can go to the bank with that and do what you might be able to do. Now, as it relates to any other permits, licenses, or regulatory compliance, I want to point you in the direction of a very useful website called calgold.ca.gov. Don, if you can help me with putting this one in the chat as well. This is a very useful website, and you go in and you search for your location. Let's say you're in Lassen County, San Benito County, San Diego County, LA County, Santa Ana County, Orange County, Riverside County. You select where you're located. I even think that there's one that says City of Long Beach, LA County. And then you search your industry: food service, direct service, barber, right? What else? Retail. You select it from your drop down, the one that most closely aligns with what you intend to do as a business, and it'll tell you which permits and which licenses are required of you, and who you need to apply to for them. So it'll tell you if you need to apply to the state of California for a seller's permit. If your county government has a different tax registration license that you need to apply for, or whether your city has one of those. And also if there's a professional license tied to your industry, cosmetology, contractor, whether you're an accountant or an attorney, right? This website will tell you, it'll get you started or point you in the right direction of which documents you need to make sure that you have on file if an auditor ever comes to reach out to you, or if a city official tries to find out that your business is actually licensed and permitted to operate in the field that it's operating in.
I just want to stop for a second and just want to thank you, Marco, for providing these resources. Oftentimes people just try to Google and find the first steps and they should take it, but having these websites here in front of them and sharing it in the chat would really be is definitely helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Don. And I think we're good on time, so happy to jump in and have a conversation wherever. Next is contracts, right? A whole other realm, and contracts lend themselves to so much, right? A contract is a transaction, right? It's something that you negotiate up front, kind of hammer out the deals, hammer out the details, who's going to get how much money, what are they getting that money for. But contracts also lend themselves to disputes, right, during the life of the contract. So it goes from being something that was really just a transaction, a conversation, into an actual, potential a space for litigation, a lawsuit, a demand, a trial, things like that. So those are things that arise out of disputes in contracts. So it's really important to know what makes a contract enforceable, and knowing what to look for in a contract, so that you know what remedies are available or what would happen in the event of a breach or a default. And I'll go over some of those terms in a moment. So my first piece of advice is that when it comes to contracts, keep things in writing as much as possible. Even if it's a simple writing, even if you feel like it's not enforceable. I'm going to tell you right now what makes a contract enforceable, but have it in writing, right? I think I see it too often. Lease agreements, people who agree to rent out a commercial space, and they've been there for years even, and they've never had a written contract, or their written contract hasn't even been revisited in maybe 20 years. They're not even the original parties. So it's important to be aware of, especially as it relates to lease agreements, renting out a commercial space. Know what's in there, know where it is, know that it's in writing. And if you have been at a location for over 20 years, then it might be time to talk to your landlord about renewing or updating the contract so that the right parties are involved in it. So this goes for lease agreements, this goes for service contracts, this goes for purchase contracts. Really, I identify what's going in there. So a couple of things that I want you to know should be in a contract. The parties, who is contracting, right? Specifically, right? Like who is offering what, who is expecting what? Is that party an LLC, or is it an individual, or are they a corporation, or are they something else? So anything that you need to do to identify the parties, you can even say things like such and such person from the county of Los Angeles, or the name and individual from the state of California. So, and that's important to be able to identify who is agreeing to the terms. Then what is it for, right? Is it for services? Is it for real property? Is it for personal property? Is it for goods, right? So what is being conveyed to whom? So it needs to be really clear about what one person is offering and the other person accepting, right? And in turn, what are they exchanging in order to make sure that that contract is going to take place? It could just be the signatures, right? So how do we make sure that when people agreed to this, they actually meant to agree to it, and what are they agreeing to? How is the contract completed, right? What are the conditions that would show that the contract has been fulfilled? What was the performance involved, right? What is it going to take for one person to actually complete the contract? Is it just delivering the items and dropping them off outside the door? Or is it actually, you know, exchanging a bill of receipt that shows that the items were delivered? Or, you know, at the conclusion of 20 hours worth of work, then the service would be completed. Or upon this date, then that would show that the contract has been completed or fulfilled. And then finally, what'll happen if that does not occur, right? If the contract is not fulfilled, if it's not fully performed upon, that's called the default, right? One party is unable to follow through on their promises under the contract. What happens then, right? What are the penalties or the remedies? Are there damages involved? Are there attorney's fees involved? And then also early termination. If one party outright says, hey, I don't want to be a part of this contract anymore, I want to completely step away. What are the penalties for that? And what are the remedies for that? Or what are the consequences? And then finally, under what circumstances would it void the contract such that the contract never existed, such that both parties are returned to how they were at the beginning of the contract, because just something was fundamentally flawed and they couldn't have entered into the agreement in the first place. So these are all, you know, dimensions of a written agreement that you should identify when you're negotiating a written agreement, that you should be able to clearly see and understand. And if it's absent, being able to have the conversation of, hey, this is missing. What would happen if this were to happen? Let's agree to it and write it down. So if you are presented with a contract, look for these terms. If you are asked to enter into a contract or draft a contract, and neither of you has an attorney, make sure at the very least that you're including some of these terms so that you actually know what you're agreeing to, and if necessary, are able to enforce those agreements in a court of law down the line. Next, employment law, also its own topic. It's called a black letter law topic, a whole field of law with its own set of rules and own set of practitioners. But very broadly, the way that it arises with small businesses is employees, right? Employees, contractors, part-time employees. What are their rights? How do I protect myself? What am I exposing myself to? So, as it relates to employees and independent contractors, I want to start here because this is a very sensitive topic. Misclassification arises all the time, and misclassification arises at even the highest levels of industry. Misclassification means treating and paying an employee as an independent contractor, because independent contractors enjoy fewer rights, including not being entitled to a minimum wage or rest breaks or other minimum rights guaranteed under California law. If you are paying somebody as an independent contractor, you might really be exposing yourself to lawsuits and liability, because there's a lot of employment attorneys out there looking for people who might be misclassified as an independent contractor. So I want you to know for yourself what it means to be an independent contractor versus an employee, by kind of walking you through the questions that a court might ask in order to reach a decision. So these are the questions you need to ask yourself, understanding that you might find yourself in a court of law having to answer these very same questions in the future. And that's just what you're exposing yourself to when you decide to hire employees. The control test. The control test asks who was in charge of that person in question. Now, this person might be an employee, might be an independent contractor, but who told them what to do? Did you tell them how to do what they did, how to do what they were required to do? Did you tell them the specific hours that they needed to work? Did you provide them the materials that they needed to complete their work? Or did you just say something like, oh, hey, here's a project, finished it on your own time. I just need it done before X date, before like October 30th. You're allowed to decide for yourself how you're going to do it. You bring your own materials. You can hire your own employees to do it. That person is an independent contractor. Whereas on the other hand, if you hire someone and you say, hey, I need you to be here every day at 8 a.m. and work until 5 p.m. The materials that you're going to use are in this closet. Make sure that those are the ones that you're using. And if you say, when you complete this project, make sure you come check in with me about the next one that you're going to take on. And finally, if you say something like, oh, I need you to complete this project, and these are the very specific ways that I need you to do it, then the question of control becomes much more debatable. And in so doing, you are exposing yourself more to liability as an employer. So, and then the final point on distinguishing between employees and independent contractors is the primary purpose of your business. What is your business out here to do? Let's say that you run a retail store and you hire someone to come in and fix the electrical lighting or complete the build out or do some advertising for the business or do some social media marketing for the business. Well, you don't do electrical, you don't do social media marketing, you don't do communications. You sell items out of your store, your retail space. Then that person is not involved in the primary purpose of your business. They're probably an independent contractor. Now, let's say that you're a retail space and you're hiring people to sell items on the floor, to reach out and engage with potential customers and get them to buy items from your store. Well, that person is doing your business. And they might be an employee and not an independent contractor. I think a lot of this makes sense to us, but these situations do arise. So I encourage you to keep in mind that this is out there. Finally, if you do decide to have an employee, there are certain things to keep in mind. Employees are guaranteed minimum rights under California law, and anything that isn't written at the outset is going to be read into the employment relationship. So there's certain types of documents that you should have on hand at the very beginning that'll protect you down the line. That's like creating an employee handbook that outlines, what the expectations are for rest breaks, for work hours, for pay, for job duties and responsibilities. And then finally, an employment agreement that says written very clearly and signed by both the employee and the employer that says what the job obligations are, what the expectations are, so that they can't come down the line later and say, oh, I wasn't asked to do that. Well, it's like, okay, well, it wasn't your agreement. So you knew that it was one of your requirements. So these are two types of documents that'll really protect you down the line as an employer. Next, really briefly on intellectual property. Our practice focuses mainly on trademark protection. So that's protecting like your name and logo. There's a couple of things that I want to say here. If you do plan on trademarking your name and logo, then make sure that you run a search on this database, the USPTO database, before you create your LLC, right? You don't want to create an LLC in the state of California, and then when you go to trademark your logo, you find that, oh, it's actually not even available at the US Patent and Trademark Office. So if you do plan on registering a trademark, make sure you run a database search before you actually create your LLC. So some considerations to keep in mind: will you be selling your goods or services just in the state of California or across the country? If it's just in California, then you would reach out to the California agency to do that if necessary. If it's across the country, then you would register your mark with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Registering each mark does cost money, over $160 each time. So those applications can start to add up. But if you don't have the cash on hand to register your mark, you can start using it already and enjoy common law protections until you actually do register the mark. And then let's say that you are not ready to register the mark, but you want to reserve it. You can file what's called an intent to use. That one costs about $220. So it's also something to keep in mind that like the cost of reserving it is pretty high. So you want to take that into consideration, and you need to renew it every so often in case you haven't actually applied for it already. This is the website for the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Familiarize yourself with them. They have a lot of materials on there that explain what service they provide and the importance of registering your mark and the costs associated with it. Now, finally, I'm going to wrap up talking about commercial tenancies because a lot of us at the outset want to think about, renting a commercial space for your business. So I want to go over some considerations to keep in mind when you're having that internal conversation. If you do decide that you need a physical location, what are your needs? Do you even need a physical location? But if so, do you need to have foot traffic? Do you need to have a certain amount of storage space? Do you need to have a bathroom? Do you need to have, AC? Those are things to keep in mind while you're searching for a space, so you don't end up agreeing to lease out a space that doesn't meet your needs. So you want to have your needs down in writing so you can have an honest conversation with a realtor or real estate agent that'll help you find a location that works for you. If you are going to lease a commercial space, be very clear about how you are receiving it, and you can actually negotiate this before you sign the contract about how you're going to receive it. A landlord is going to want you to receive it as is and start paying for it right away. But maybe you might be able to negotiate in improvements by the landlord. And if there are any improvements that need to be made, maybe you can negotiate a later rent start date. So maybe you sign the agreement and the landlord gives you about 3 months to build it out before you actually start renting out, before you actually start paying rent. And then finally, you want to know up front, what are the conditions for vacating, for actually leaving the space? Are you going to be required to leave any fixtures? Are you going to be required to take all your fixtures? Are they going to ask you to completely tear out your floor before you leave? So you want to know that before you sign the agreement, because otherwise it'll end up being a dispute on the back end. A practical consideration, I want you to evaluate whether you actually trust this property owner or property management company, because a lot of relationships can fall apart over lack of trust. Even though things might be in the contract or not in the contract, you want to know who you're getting into business with ultimately. And then finally, who is signing the lease? Is it the business as an LLC or corporation, or is it the individual? Or maybe it's both. Maybe it's the LLC signing it and the individual signing a personal guarantee that ultimately makes them liable under the contract as well. And just a final note, if the tenant is an LLC or a corporation, it must be represented by an attorney in a lawsuit. LLCs and corporations cannot represent themselves because they are actually separate entities. So a sole proprietor can represent themselves, but not an LLC or a corporation. We actually pushed it on time. I want to leave this slide up. We have a couple of minutes left for question and answer, but that's everything that I had to talk about today.
Wow, thank you, Marco. You covered a lot, honestly. I actually learned a couple more things myself. But we do actually have a question from one of our attendees, Sandy. She asked if the PowerPoint presentation can be shared or will it be sent out? Would it be okay if I can send it to our...
Yeah. I worked on a most recent version today. I need to edit one slide, but I can send that to you for distribution. I'll send it to Sion and Don for distribution.
Oh, that's great. Perfect. Thank you. So I guess, yeah, like you said, we're opening this up to questions and answers. If anyone online, if you have a question now, feel free to type it in chat. I know we have some in person. You can speak it out loud if you like. And I can ask Marco. Okay. Yeah, I think we did really well on time. We're a little shy of 4 minutes, but I guess we can probably close this out now, Marco. Thank you again for your presentation. If you like anyone online, you can actually take a screenshot of this too, to save this information. But but we do have one question from Seyan. I'm gonna mute here.
Hey, Marco, thank you for the nice presentation here. Very detailed and definitely dense. So generally, like if somebody signed up as a client to get services, I know it depends on the situation that they bring to you and how quickly resolved. Typically, what is the process? They sign up to be an assistant, to get an assistant, and then they just go through like assign a lawyer, or how does that work?
So, yeah, this is the first step, right? Application for assistance. Now, after the application for assistance gets filled out, it immediately comes through our inbox. And like we get, you know, dozens of applications each day. So those get assigned to advocates, myself and some of the paralegals and legal secretaries to actually hold what's called an intake interview. And that happens like very soon after the application. Like that gets turned around within a day. So we have a conversation. We reach out by email and by phone to schedule an interview with the applicant. At that point, we'll talk about what's going on. We'll also like ask some interview questions about the business in the background. That's when we verify eligibility for services. And then if the client's eligible and if it's something that we can do, at that point, we'll have the conversation of like, okay, here's what we'll promise, here's what we'll agree to do. We'll send over a retainer agreement that outlines our services and sets the expectations. That needs to be signed by the applicant who is now formally an attorney. I mean, signed by the applicant who's now formally a client. And at that point, we start working the case and either try to connect someone to a pro bono attorney right away, because the retainer might be for pro bono services, or it's for us to do it in-house, and then we'll immediately get to work on investigating or drafting or corresponding or reaching out to another party as required under the retainer.
Oh, okay, sorry. Marco, I should have asked this question first. You said it has to be a for-profit businesses. So sometimes we work with small businesses here that hasn't become like an official business yet. Like they're not established. So if they were to reach out to you for, I guess, steps towards to becoming, you know, a DBA and whatnot, do they still qualify for the help?
Yeah, so let me speak about that a little bit at length. To answer the first part of your question, a small business that isn't profitable is absolutely welcome to apply for us, even if they're just getting started. The distinction that I had made about for-profit businesses means that we don't help nonprofits and we don't help people who plan on making a nonprofit or creating a nonprofit. So even if you're still just kind of thinking about what you want to do with your business, but you know that it's going to be a for-profit business, then absolutely reach out to us for services. However, we do have a lot of conversations with with people who are like, oh, I have an idea for a business, but I don't really know where to start. I don't know who to reach out to, like that type of thing. So because we provide legal advice, we're kind of expecting a certain level of operations for your business so that we can actually help with the legal parts to fine tune what you want to do. And I've worked with startups before, but there are people who have a startup idea and they're actually like working toward formalizing some relationships. But when people like are coming to us at that earliest stage, usually the conversation goes with us referring them back to an organization such as your own or the Small Business Collaborative, so we can say like, hey, it sounds like you might need some mentorship. Draft a business plan, get an idea of what you want to do, and then, you know, it'll be worth it to help you get your EIN, and it'll be worth it to help you create an LLC because you actually have a vision for what you want to do with your business. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. Yeah, that saves everybody a lot of time, especially you guys, you know, since you're lawyers and, you know, doing really more, I would say, meaningful and where people are at, not like starting from, yeah, the beginning. The last question I have is, do you have like a cheat sheet list of, say, if you're starting out business or kind of at a certain space already, these are the things that you need like to be doing, like to get, you know, an EIN number, or doing a bank account as a doing business as and things like that.
So I don't have a checklist, but I have a handbook. And it's like a short handbook that was created by our staff in the past, like last year, and it has everything that you're looking for, and it has sections on like the different topics that I talked about today. And like it provides checklists within those topics. So I think that one would be really useful to distribute. And we also have that one like in I think 6 or 7 languages. So I'm happy to connect that one to you, and maybe Don can distribute that with this presentation once after this.
Yeah, that would be great. Sandy had actually just asked that question if she can get a copy of the handbook. Do you know by chance if you have it in Khmer, Cambodian language, Marco?
Let me check.
You don't have to tell me that, but
I think
was just
I can tell you afterwards over email, and I can send you a direct link to like the languages that we do have. I have to like go search for the different languages right now.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
For the different versions.
But thanks for covering that, by the way, and thanks for asking that question, Sayan. I was gonna actually ask you what was the intake process was like, and that kind of slipped my mind a little bit. But thank you for that. Sayan, did you have any final questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I know it's already a little bit after 3, and Marco's been really kind of generous with his time here.
Yeah, thank you for still providing us some information and answering questions a little after 3. But I guess we can close out now. But before I do, I just want to let everyone know that after the workshop ends, you will get a survey, a post workshop survey, which will either be sent out later in the afternoon or probably tomorrow morning. So if you can just take that for us and let us know how we did, give us some feedback, or maybe even let us know what topics you would probably want to learn next or learn about, that would be great. And again, I just want to thank Marco with Bet Tzedek and his team for actually providing us with this learning experience, and Sayan, my program manager, for co-hosting. And I think that's it for us today. And I would just like to wish everyone a good day. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you all. It was
Bye,
great
everyone.
working with you. Looking forward to the next one.
For sure. Take
Thank you.
care.
Thank you, Marco. Have a good day. Bye.